and we'll get started. All right, awesome. Good evening, everyone, again. Welcome to this session. My name is Aditi, and I am an Education USA advisor, located here in Mumbai. Let me just quickly pull up my presentation. Just give me a thumbs up when you guys are able to see my presentation. All right. I hope that you're able to see my presentation now. I'm going to, before we actually get to today's session, and for Dev to share all kinds of important information with you guys about, what goes into college essays, I wanted to take a quick minute and introduce to you what Education USA is. If you are someone who is attending Education USA webinars for the first time, again, I would want to welcome you if this is the first time that you're joining a webinar like this. Education USA, let me just make sure that all my tech is working here, guys. Just give me a minute. All right. Education USA is your official source on higher education. We are supported by the US Department of State. In other words, basically means we are supported by the federal government in the US. Education USA, when you think about us being a global network of student advising centers, right? Which means that we are spread across the world. As you can see on this slide, our centers are located in more than 175 countries and territories. Our office, exists so that we can offer you accurate, comprehensive current information, but I think also very importantly, unbiased information. Education USA represents all the accredited US universities in the US, and there are over 4,000 accredited US universities. Here in India, we are located in 5 cities. So wherever you find a US consulate or a US embassy, you will also find an Education USA office. So we are located in New Delhi, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Chennai, and Mumbai. So, if you are not from the Maharashtra region, if you are from, other states, find out, which is the closest Education USA center to you and keep in touch with us. We'll be happy to assist you in your application journey. Now, every year around this time, around October, November, December, we come out with a report called as Open Doors Report. This is done in collaboration with the International Institute of Education, Education USA, and the State Department to kind of look at what's going on in terms of student mobility. And in consecutive years post COVID, we have now great news to share with you. The number of international students who are pursuing their higher education in the US, who are participating in internships, that number this year has been historically high. We have more than 11 lakh students, international students, who are pursuing their undergrad and graduate studies in the US, which I think is a pretty fascinating news. Out of these, this huge, international student body, there are over 331,000 students who are Indian students. So we now make up, more than a quarter of the international student body. This, again, it's a very, very happy news for all of us. We are seeing these numbers every year go up. So we know that for Indian students, US remains to be one of the top destinations to pursue, your higher educational dreams. So just quickly, how can you reach out to us? So there are different ways how you can do this, and I'll share that resource sheet that I told you in the chat box. But this is a great way. So Education USA India just launched the website, so you can see this website. I'll share the website name as well. But just look for educationusa.in, and it should take you to this page. There is a lot of wealth of information to find about what goes into the application process. So go check it out. This is also a great place where you can find what are the upcoming sessions. So for example, today Mumbai is coordinating with Reed College to talk about college essays, but maybe Chennai is doing another session on financial aid. So just keep an eye out, register for these sessions, and more importantly, I would say if you're registering, please show up for these sessions because these are very, very informative sessions and you can learn a lot through these sessions. Another great resource that you guys can, really avail is our YouTube channel. So look for this symbol, this channel name, Education USA India. In fact, this session will also go out, eventually on YouTube. So you can always come back and refer to these sessions. We call, our YouTube channel as a 24/7 advising center because there is so much that we share on this channel. So keep an eye out on for this as well. Of course, we have a free app that you can, access through Google Play or App Store. Again, this is a great way to keep updated with, upcoming sessions and things like that. I'm going to actually, tell you guys that, we do a everyday session that just, gives you an overview of the application process. So if you're a student or a parent who doesn't know how to go about this process, I would really encourage you to attend this virtual session. You don't have to go anywhere, literally have to click on a link and attend that session any day or from Monday to Friday between 4 and 4:45, and I'll share the information with you. But I think with this, I am going to stop here and I'm going to introduce today's presenter. Um, so we have, I had a pleasure to meet Mr. Dev Devvrat, who's the Associate Dean of Admissions at Reed College. And it was, really great to meet with him this year and talk to him about what Reed College has to, offer to students. And he was really generous in, offering this opportunity to actually talk about what he sees in the application, applications that they receive every year, right? And you know that, essays is something very, very important to students. So I really hope that you guys are going to enjoy the session and really get, information that you're looking for. Perhaps you're also going to find information that you didn't know about. Or, hopefully it will clarify all your confusions about what goes into and in a college essay. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dave. Please take it over.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. I appreciate the welcome and the introduction. I am going to put a document in the chat box. This is the a handout for this presentation, so you can follow along. I would also recommend if you have a pen and paper handy, or your phone, if you want to use the Notes app or something. We are going to do a small activity as part of today's presentation. Let me share my screen. Okay, great. Um, so hopefully you can see this first slide here. But today's session is all about writing your college essay. This information is all Reed College branded, but the information itself is very general. So this is not just for our college, but for most college undergraduate programs in the US. This information is going to be helpful to help you formulate your college essay. You can use this information for scholarship essays. You can use this for your primary college essay. You can use this information for your supplementary essay. So a lot of colleges require multiple essays to be submitted. We call those supplementary essays. And so you can use this information to help support those as well. So we're going to go through a bunch of slides. We're going to look at some examples of essays, little snippets, just a couple, paragraph or so of an essay. During those sessions, during those slides, I'm going to tell you straight up if it's a weak example or a strong example. I am going to ask you to tell me why you think it's a weak example or a strong example. Um, okay, so let's get started. Neither analytical nor creative, the personal essay is a combination of both that reveals who the student is. Your essay is one component of a greater application, right? So the things that you want to think about when you are writing your essay is what am I communicating to the college that I'm applying to about who I am? What are my values? What are my goals? What are my objectives? What is it that I'm trying to accomplish with this essay? And that is what we're trying to get at. But you want to think about where else am I communicating with the college, right? Things like social media is a big piece nowadays, right? Things like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Tumblr, Reddit, all of these different social media platforms where you can connect with colleges. We're looking at that kind of, we see the comments that, students are leaving there as well. So, thinking about like what am I saying? What am I putting out there into the world that is going to be out there forever, right? Even when you delete something, it's still saved somewhere on a server. Right. So thinking about what is it that I'm actually communicating, and what is that telling the college about me? Um, we put as admission counselors, there's this common misconception that we are looking for reasons to deny you. That is not true at all. My job is to advocate for you. If you are applying to my institution, I want to be able to advocate for you. I want to be able to say, yes, let's take this student, right? And so a lot of this advice that we're going to give you today is to help you help me be able to advocate for you, right? And be able to tell us a little bit more about you. We put a lot of time, attention, and care into who we are inviting into our community. And that's where this essay comes into play. Your essay tells us that personal piece about who you are. One of the hardest things about the college application is, what do I even write about? Where do I start? What do I talk about? Right? There's a lot of different ways to approach the college essay. We're going to do an exercise called the objects exercise. The objects exercise is a way for you to think about what are things in my life that I can use as a gateway to talk about my story or my life or the values that are important to me that I want this institution to know. So what I'm going to do, so if you have a pen and paper handy, if you've got your phone ready, what I'm going to do is I am going to list a bunch of questions. And what I want you to do is write down the first thing that comes to your mind when I read you this question. I'm going to go pretty fast because I want you to just take the first one or two things that come to your mind. Don't spend too much time thinking about it or overthinking about it. That's what I naturally do. So I'm going to go quickly, and just write down the first thing that comes to your mind when I ask you these questions. Okay, I'll wait 10 more seconds if you're still trying to find a pen and paper. Okay, let's get started. What's your favorite gift you've ever been given? What is an object that reminds you of your family? What is something that is in your bag right now that is probably not in anyone else's bag? What is the first thing that you see when you wake up in the morning? If your house was on fire, what would you happily leave behind to burn? What is your favorite food? What is something that you found? Be careful with this next one. What is something that you stole? My heart. Aw. What is something that you had to save up for? Like save money for? And the last question, what is an object that represents your dreams? Okay, so you should have a list of at least maybe hopefully at least one object or maybe at least a couple objects in front of you. This is a really great way to think about what are some things that are important to you in your life and how can you use that to talk about your story. So I'll give you an example of my object. My object is my car. When I went to college, I did not go to Reed College. I went to a different school here in Portland. I used to take the bus to school every day for my entire first year. And the Portland bus system has gotten a lot better, but back in the day when I was going to college, like 10 years ago, the bus system was not great, and it would always get me to school late or super early. It was always incredibly crowded, incredibly congested. My last issue with the bus, my last straw with the bus, I was sitting on the bus, I was eating a bagel and some person got onto the bus. They took the bagel out of my hand and they went to the back of the bus, sat down, and ate the rest of my bagel. It was a traumatic experience. I was very hungry. They obviously needed the bagel more than I do. But that was my last straw. I was like, I'm done taking the bus to school. Literally the next day, I went and I bought a brand new car. It was a 2011 Honda CRV, and that car was my baby. Finished going to college in that car. I'm the first person in my family to have a college education, especially from the US. That car allowed me to come to read every day when I got this job 5 years ago, and allowed me to get to work with really amazing students like you all. That I've had road trips in that car, I've had breakups in that car. I moved my sister into her college when it was her time, um, so she can pursue her dreams. This car allowed me to elevate myself as a person. It allowed me to have access to all these things in my life that helped me grow and change and develop as an individual. The car is not what's important to the story, right? But what's important to the story are all these moments in my life that attributed to who I am today. And I'm using the car as my crutch to talk about my growth in my life and how I found these different, or how I was able to attain these different goals that I had for myself. And so that's what I would write my essay on, right? Again, the car is not what's important, but all these moments in my life that I pieced together to talk about who I am. I ended up selling that car. I sold that car to my best friend, and I bought the same exact car, but a brand new version, um, just a few years ago. So I am a creature of habit. Okay, these are the different keys or elements that we're going to talk about in this presentation. So let's start with the first one, filling in the blanks. Your college application is one of the last things in your, or sorry, let me start over. Your essay is one of the last pieces of your application that you have 100% control over. You cannot go back in time and go do more extracurricular activities. You cannot control what a letter of recommendation is going to say about you. You can't go back and get better grades or, turn in that homework that you didn't do, 2 years ago, to get a better grade. This is the last thing that you have 100% control over. So make sure you slow down, right? And think about what is it that I'm writing and what is it that I'm communicating to the college. This is your opportunity to tell us something new about you. A common mistake that I often see students making is they write an essay about all the activities that they're doing, right? I'm not asking you to write a resume. As a matter of fact, your application will have an activities list where you list all of the different activities that you've done while you were in school, all your volunteer work, all of your clubs, all of your nonprofit work, any kind of interests that you've had, you're going to list all of that in your activities. So use this space to tell us something new about who you are, right? Because otherwise, you're just repeating information that I've already learned about you, and you're not using that space to tell us more information about you as an individual. So let's take a look at a weak example of an essay. In the 10th grade, I was the captain of the varsity cross country and basketball teams. I also starred in 3 theater performances that year, and I helped with the theater tech crew. It was a busy year. Last year, I started a recycling program at my high school, and I did research with a neuroscience professor at Portland State University. This year, I'm devoting more time to my classes, but still playing saxophone in the jazz band. Why is this a weak example? You can put your answer in the chat box. You can take yourself off mute, whatever you're comfortable with. But why do we think this is a weak example? Anybody? Okay. The student has done so many great things, but I don't get ready why they did all of these things. Okay. Yeah, I think this essay I think is a great example of writing a resume as an essay. And that's exactly what I said not to do, right? This is telling us all these activities that they've done, right? They did basketball, they did cross country, they were part of the theater program, they started a recycling program, they did research, they're doing saxophone in the jazz band. That's 6 activities in 2 to 3 sentences, right? That's not telling us anything new. As a matter of fact, I will see your activities list just before I see your essay. So all of that information is already fresh in my mind. What am I learning that's new about this student? Probably nothing so far. Okay. Be creative with the everyday. We recognize that your life might have had these really dramatic moments, and that's great, depending on what the what the event is. But what I want to know is who are you on the day to day, right? Because who you are on the day to day is who you will be when you're in college. I often see these cliche essays, right? I was on the sports team and we were playing basketball and it was down to the buzzer and I shot the ball and made the 3-point score and we won the game, right? Okay, cool. That's you in a very dramatic, this like, you know, really major moment. But who are you on the day to day? Because that story doesn't tell me who you are on the day to day, right? I think sometimes students think that they have to tell they have to do these, life-altering things in order to write an essay. We recognized you probably have not cured cancer, right? And I'm not expecting you to cure cancer just to get into college. One time I was at a college fair in Denver, Colorado. This was back in 2019, and I had a student come up to my booth and say, I want to apply to read, but I first need to start a nonprofit. That way I'm competitive for your school. And my answer to that person was, look, if you want to start a nonprofit organization to do good stuff in the world, great, do that. But you do not need to start a nonprofit just to get into college. The other thing around here is, I think what a common thing that a lot of students also do is what we in the US call trauma dump. A lot of students will trauma dump in their college essays where they tell us these moments of trauma that they've had in their life because they feel like they have to tell us a sad story in order to get into college. That is also not true, right? You don't have to do that kind of stuff. Now, if that's central to your story, if you think that's going to add value, if you think that's going to tell us about your goals and objectives, then sure, that might be a way to go. But my point here is, would you walk into a McDonald's or a Starbucks and tell the cashier the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to you? Probably not. So why would you tell me? I'm just a stranger, just like that cashier at Starbucks. You don't have to have these like traumatic moments to get into college, right? Lastly, we want you to showcase who you are today, right? Sometimes students your age will tell us things that they did 5 years ago. Great. That was great for you 5 years ago. But because of how young you all are, 5 years ago, you and who you are today are very different people, right? This part of your life, you are growing and changing and developing every single day. Whether you realize it or not, you are evolving every day. So making sure that you're telling us something that is more recent. Now, when you're old and decrepit like me, 5 years ago, you and who you are today are the same thing, right? But when you are young as you all are, 5 years ago, you was a different person, right? And so we want you to showcase who you are now. That was partially a joke. I'm not that old, but that's why I have a skincare routine. Okay, here's a weak example. The summer after my junior year, I went to Panama with my church youth group to volunteer. We worked every day building homes, playing with the children of the village, and developing an irrigation system. I thought I was going there to help people, but really, I was the one who was helped the most. Why is this a weak example? This one's a little bit harder. Here's where I struggle with this essay. My issue with this essay is the issue is not that they did this volunteer activity, right? I think that's great that they did that. I think that's awesome. Um, that they're going out and doing things that are important to them. The problem with this essay is that there's a good chance 30 other people did the same exact activity as you, how is your experience any different than theirs, right? Here's the other issue. This is such a cliche essay, right? I call this the bumper sticker of essays. I feel like bumper stickers are a very US concept, but this is a very cliche essay. This is an essay where you know, you're talking about this like I'm here to help people and save their lives, but they saved my life too, right? Like we call this like virtue signaling. That's what I'm getting with this essay, right? I'm not really sure that I'm learning what is unique about the student through this essay. Now, to the student's benefit, this is only a couple of sentences of a 650 word essay. So maybe they expand upon it. But right now, where we are with this first few sentences, we're not off to a good start. Be focused. I think sometimes students try to fit in a ton of information into an essay, and it gets overwhelming and it becomes very disjointed. What I'm asking you to do is be concise and narrow the scope of what you are trying to talk about. So here is an analogy that I will use. Let's say I walk into your house, you invite me over, and I walk into your house, and I am standing I'm standing in front of your bedroom, and I'm in the door, and I'm looking into your room, and I have to understand who you are as a person based on what I'm seeing in your room. Maybe your room is messy. Maybe your room is clean. Maybe you have posters on the wall, or trophies, or books, or video games. Um, that's a lot of information that I'm learning about you just by looking at your room. It's almost too much information, right? It's really overwhelming. Now, let's say you close the door and you look through the keyhole, and I can only see one thing through the little keyhole up in your room. And I have to use that one thing that I see to get a better understanding of who you are as a person. That is what we're asking you to do. It's not about the breadth of your story. It's not about all these things that have happened in your life, but it's about the depth of what your story is telling us, right? So that is what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to focus your story and use that space to paint a picture about your values and your goals. So here's a great example. I wear overalls to school. These are dark wash denim pants, dark wash denim, baggy pant legs, and two straps over my shoulders, fastened tight by two copper buttons. I don't wear them for farming, painting, or railroad construction, but for the pure and sweet pleasure of wearing trousers that are held up by my shoulders. It's not an everyday thing, but when I wear them, I feel invincible. What I like about this essay is a couple of things. One, it looks like somebody did the objects exercise when they wrote this essay, right? They're talking about this pair of pants that they have that makes them feel invincible, right? What's not important is the pants, but it's this feeling of invincibility. That is what's important to the student. That is what they're trying to communicate to us. It's this, and hopefully, if we're reading the rest of this essay, they unpack why this feeling of invincibility is important to them, right? What is that telling us about the student? Um, so that's why I like this essay, right? It really takes this um, a very poetic approach to something simple that many people own. If you learn nothing else in this presentation, this is the most important thing that you should take away from this entire session. We we call it the so what. This is essentially the heart of your essay. Sometimes you might hear this as the thesis of your essay. Basically, this is telling us as the reader, why is what I'm telling you important, right? So this is what we're trying to get at. You're moving beyond the description and you're telling us this story that I'm telling you is important because this is the value that I want you to know that is important to me. Whether it's a value, whether it's a goal of yours, whether it's a dream of yours, whether it's a characteristic that you have, that we call that so what moment. Sometimes I'll read essays and I get all the way to the bottom of the essay and I think to myself, okay, so what? I learned nothing about you. Why was any of this important? Like you told me nothing, right? And which is shocking sometimes because there's 650 words in your essay, and how you managed to get all the way to all through it without actually telling me something is impressive. So make sure you're thinking to yourself, okay, what is the point of what I'm saying? What is it that I'm trying to communicate? That is this central theme, this central value that I want the reader to know, because this is an important piece about who I am as an individual. If you think back to the main sort of that quote that we looked at in the beginning of this presentation, that is the whole purpose of the essay, right? The whole purpose of the essay is to tell us something about who you are, because we do care about who we're allowing to join our community. And that's what point is trying to accomplish. Is this helps me understand who you are. Who are you going to be when you're at my college? Who are you as an individual? Who are you in terms of your values, your goals, your hopes, your wishes, your dreams, your objectives, the things that are important to you, that matter to you? That is what we're looking at with this point. Here's a great example. I do truly adore lobster fishing. My love for it extends past the obvious, past the fact that I get to make money, past the fact that I get to work outside in the beautiful summer weather. It extends far beyond the free lobsters, even past the blossoming friendships that I have with my colorful coworkers. I owe it a vast debt of gratitude. Lobster fishing opened my eyes to hard work and determination, and in doing so, it allowed me to flourish substantially in high school. Here's what I like about this essay. This essay is much more straightforward, right? And if I had to pick the so what moment from this essay, it would be this last sentence. Lobster fishing opened my eyes to hard work and determination. And in doing so, it allowed me to flourish substantially in high school. What this student is telling me is that they went fishing for lobsters, right? That's not what's important. What's important, they got a lot out of it, right? They got to make money, they got to work outside, they got to in the beautiful weather, they got to make a lot of really great friends with a lot of really interesting people. All of that is great. But the most important thing that they learned from this experience is the value of hard work and determination, and then how they hope to use that to be successful in school. That is what's the so what moment. That is what the student is trying to communicate to us, and tell us that is important to them, right? That is what the student is trying to accomplish. If you look at that document I put in the chat box, or in the chat box, you can see this whole essay written out if you want to look at it further. However, I also want to bring out a point that's different between this essay and the overalls essay. Both are strong examples, right? But very different essays. The overalls essay was written much more poetically. It was written much more beautifully, right? There's a lot of like feeling attached to it. Whereas this essay is a little bit more straightforward, right? I like A, B, and C because of X, Y, and Z. And both are totally fine. When you're writing your college essay, write in whatever voice is comfortable to you. If you are not a poetic writer, that is okay. If you are not, if you are more of just a straightforward writer, that is totally fine. You don't have to write poetically just to get into college. Sometimes people go a little too far with the poetic writing, and it feels like I'm reading Shakespeare. And I'm going to speak about Reed College specifically. We get 10,000 applications a year for about 450 seats. I don't have time to reread your essay if I didn't understand it the first time. So sometimes I think people who write poetically almost go too far in the deep end, where it feels like I'm reading like these like ancient poems that I don't understand, when all they're talking about is like how they dealt with acne, you know? Like that's the kind of like level that we're at with this. So if you are much more of a straightforward writer, that's okay. I tend to be a humorous writer. In all of my papers that I wrote in high school and college, even in the serious topics, I felt very comfortable being a humorous writer. That was a style that worked for me. But my sister is a much more straightforward writer. Um, and that's okay. We're both different people. We both have different writing styles. Neither are wrong. So that's a point that I want to make is the college essay is not the place to start experimenting with new voices, right? If you have a style that works for you, stick to it. Proofread, proofread, proofread. Things like spelling and grammar are incredibly important. Um, Making sure that you're reading your essay out loud. When you write an essay, you're rereading it in your head, your brain skips over the mistakes because it's your own writing, right? And so you're not necessarily reading the words per se, but you're skimming it based off your own thoughts. When you read your own essay out loud, you are forcing your brain to read every single word individually, and that's how you catch some of those mistakes. The thesaurus is not your friend, so if you're the kind of person that likes to use, a thesaurus to replace words and make it sound more fancy or academic, and when that's not what's naturally fitting with the rest of your essay, um, it's going to look very weird. It's going to look very clunky in your essay. I would avoid that. And then make sure you organize your writing, right? Using an outline. Whenever I have to write anything, even nowadays, like for work, I sometimes will have to write emails that are going to go to thousands of students. And if I don't know where to start, I just write with bullet points. Like I know these are all the points that I want to make in this email, or in your case in this essay. So just start with bullet points, and then you can fill everything in between, right? But making sure that you're kind of organizing yourself so that way there's a good flow to what it is that you're writing. Um, Here is a weak example. Reed is my dream school. As a small university, we're actually not a university, we're a college, and there is a difference. Located in the Pacific Northwest, the N in Northwest should be capitalized. Reed has everything I could ever want in a college. The psych program's emphasis on neuro is perfect for me. Make sure you're spelling those full words out, right? So the psychology program's emphasis on neuroscience is perfect for me. I'm engrossed in my AP Psyche course. That's not a real class. I also love hiking and skiing. I know I contribute a lot to the classroom. I'm used to speaking up because my current high school uses a Harkness method, so we've got some contraction issues. Read is also a place where I can metamorphose into a true intellectual. So apparently, we're all butterflies metamorphosing now into intellectuals. So this is a very extreme example of a poorly written essay with spelling and grammar issues. But every year, I get dozens and dozens of essays that look like this, where nothing was proofread, nobody looked at it. You can ask your counselors, your teachers to help and proofread your essays. Be careful about getting too many voices and too many people helping you, because then you start to lose your own voice. But using your resources to help you uh, and provide feedback, is not a bad idea. Okay. That is everything that I have to present. This is my email address, so I'm happy to answer any questions now, but also happy to share my email address here if you think of other questions or need assistance. But what can I tell you? What can I answer for you all?
Great, Dave. That was a great presentation. I think you hit on very relevant points and made it a very personal, content. So I hope that the students who've joined in today actually could resonate. Maybe you are currently working on some of these essays that you're going to apply to some of the universities. And I really would encourage everyone to use this opportunity. Dave is someone who, as he mentioned, reads hundreds of essays, every year. So he can perhaps, give you more, kind of sitting on the other side of the table, can tell you what are some of the common mistakes that you make. So let's see. I think we have got um, one question. So I'm just going to read out what this is. All the points you have said are great, but they are applicable for the essay in the master's program. Mariam, actually, this all the points that Dave has mentioned are for undergraduate applicants, who have to develop a college essay. For graduate students, the statement of purpose is very, very different, and we have done a bunch of other sessions, for that. So you can check out our YouTube channel. Um, I will get started with asking you, one question, Dave, here. We are getting, more often than before, we're getting to hear students asking about, my English is not that great. It's not been my first language in the first couple of years of my, say, middle years. Um, can I use ChatGPT when I am drafting my college essay? Can you, maybe elaborate a little bit more because we are living in this, times now when ChatGPT is accessible to everyone. How do colleges look at that? I know every university college has a different policy on how students can UI, use AI tools. But if you can just elaborate a little bit more, that might be helpful.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think to your point, every college does have a different philosophy around artificial intelligence and resources like ChatGPT, and I think those can be great resources. However, my opinion, and I think sort of our thought process around the college essay is we want to hear from you, right? I don't want to hear from a chat bot telling me a story about who you are. I want to hear from you. And I want to know what are your thoughts, right, about your life, your this is I'm not asking ChatGPT to tell me what are their goals and values, right? I'm asking, the students to tell me, um, what are things that are important to you? What are things that matter to you? And I don't know that ChatGPT is going to help you with that process, right? So that would be sort of, my opinion. I think it sometimes, we see essays coming in all the time where it's very obvious that they use ChatGPT. You guys, ChatGPT is not great when it comes to writing essays. I think it's a very helpful tool, and I've used it in the past for various things as well. I'm not saying it's not a great tool, but I think when it comes to this part of your application, I want to hear from you. There are many times where I'll read a student's application and they have near perfect English in their essay, and then I look at the emails that they send me. I look at their supplementary essays. I look at um, some of the sentences they write in other parts of the application, and there's a big discrepancy in the English proficiency. And then it becomes very apparent to me that they used some sort of chat GPT type thing to write their essay, right? And so our preference for, and I'm only going to speak about Reed because that's where I work and that's what I can tell you. But I feel most liberal arts colleges, you know, to some degree might agree with this, that we want to hear from you as a student, right? We want to hear your voice. We want to learn a little bit more about you directly from you. Now, if you're concerned about the English proficiency piece, That's totally understandable. That's why I advise to have one or two people help you look over your essay. I will also just be honest, you do have to have a high level of English proficiency in order to be successful in college in the US. Like, depending on the college you're going to, but especially at some of these more liberal arts colleges like Reed, where we are fairly rigorous, we do have some pretty high standards of English proficiency. And that's not to single anybody out, but we move quickly. There's a lot of really advanced topics that we cover. And if you're struggling to grasp the proficiency part, you're going to find those classes to be very challenging. And my goal is for you to come to college and to be successful. And I would be doing you a disservice by admitting you and having you come to our college if you're not prepared or ready, right? And that doesn't mean that you're not worthy of an education. That does not mean that you're not worthy of learning. But every college is different, and so you just want to make sure that um, you're preparing yourself and you're setting yourself up for being successful.
That's great. I think that's a very helpful advice, for students. And I think um, if you are someone who does struggle, with languages, it's not necessarily just the English language. I think one of the things that, we do advise students in this process is start early. So if you do dream of, maybe studying in the US, tell them start at least a year, 2 years before you even plan to join a school in the US. And that will give you an ample, opportunities to work on some of these weaknesses that you might have, work with your teachers in your school, your parents or your siblings or friends. I think those are some great resources, that you should utilize. The regarding usage of AI tools, I feel that this is something that only you can control, and you shouldn't just go by what the universities policies, because only you know who you are. So as long as it is possible that you might want to use the AI to make sure that you're grammatically writing things correctly, but the voice that you have in your essay has to be your voice. As they've said that your college essays are this one window through which the universities and colleges are trying to say if the student in fact is going to be successful at their institution, right? Otherwise, it, as we said, it will be a disservice if if they admit you in the program realizing that you're probably not going to thrive on that campus, right? So it's very important, when you do have these kind of questions, I'll say get in touch with Education USA. We will be happy to discuss those things with you to make sure you are on the right track. Um, we have a question, I think, in the chat. I didn't get how to create a story out of my life for an essay. Can you throw some light on this?
Sure, yeah. There's a couple of ways to do this, right? At the very beginning of this presentation, we did that objects exercise, and so you can use that as a tool to talk about your story, right? As some other advice around kind of what your central story is, I think a lot of times people want to use other people in their life to talk about themselves, right? A great example, I read an essay a few years ago about the student who spent a majority of their essay talking about their mom and how important their mom was and all the things that their mom did for them, which is great, but I'm not trying to admit your mom. I'm trying to admit you. And so I think so. If you're applying with the Common App, so if you're not familiar with this term, the Common App is an application system that allows you to apply to multiple colleges in the US at the same time. Within the Common App, you have 7 different essay prompts you can choose from. You pick a prompt and you write the essay, right? You have 650 words to tell me about who you are. That's not a lot of space. It sounds like a lot of words. It's not, trust me. And it's like maybe one page. And so you only have 650 words to tell me about who you are. And oftentimes, in that particular essay, that student spent 500 words talking about their mom, and then the remaining like 100 to talk about themselves. And what I'm telling you is to do the opposite, right? If you want to talk about something that happened in your life or someone who's impacted your life, and then use that to talk about your story, totally fine. But make sure you're limiting how much you're telling us about the other person or that other situation, right? So in that case of that student who talked about her mom, what I would have preferred is that rather than the formula that she used, I would have preferred that she'd only spend maybe 100 words talking about her mom, and then spending the remaining, 500 words talking about why that was important to her, right? What are the values that her mom taught her, and why that was important to her as a student, right? And what has she gotten out of that? What has that done for her life? How has that helped her grow as a person? So, your story can be anything you want it to be, right? It can be about a situation that's happened to you. It can be about an object. It can be about another person who's had an impact on you. One of the essays that I read a couple of years ago that has also stood out to me is each paragraph that the student wrote. It was almost like a poem, but each paragraph was maybe 3 or 4 sentences, and it was about a different part of their life. The first one was about video games. The second one was about their interest in karate. The third paragraph was about their passion for theater. When I first started reading this, and I'm going to be honest, I judged this essay very quickly. I was like, oh gosh, this is a mess. But then I got to the very end, and they connected all of these points together in that final paragraph. And then what they did really well was tell me the so what. I wish the so what would have come sooner because then I wouldn't have judged the essay, but that was on me. Um, but they did a really great job of saying, but here's why these things have shaped who I am today. And they did such a great job of it, right? It was a very different essay. I have another example of an essay that I really liked. A student wrote an essay from the perspective of their kitchen table. So they took on the persona of the kitchen table and talked about how the family his parents were going through a divorce, and so he talked about how the dynamic of the family changed and impacted him as the fam around the kitchen table as this was happening to his life and his parents, right? And it was very interesting to read, and I had to like think about it for a while. I'm like, did I like this essay? And honestly, I mean, it was so memorable for me that I can't help but really like it because they did a good job of talking about themselves, even though it was about their parents' divorce, right? And sort of what they got from that experience. I mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it again, right? You do not have to dump your trauma into an essay. And we're people too, right? Like I've read some horrendous essays and by horrendous I mean the essays were fine, but like things that people have experienced in their lives, the abuse or the trauma that they've experienced. And I mean, I'm a person too, right? Like I sometimes have to step away from my computer and process what I just read. And I can't imagine experiencing that, let alone reading it, right? You don't
Mhm.
have you don't have to do that, right? In a college essay. No, again, I'm not saying you shouldn't. Like if that's central to who you are and you feel that that's important for us to know, then sure. But I don't want you to think like you have to do that in order to get into college. You don't have to have life-altering moments in order to get into college.
Absolutely. And I'll just add to, what Dave was saying here, a couple of things to kind of keep in mind. Writing is a process. Everything
Mhm.
is not going to come to you overnight. And that's why it's important that you start early. The essay prompts that Dave was talking about, you might find that you relate to more than one prompt, and it's okay if you want to start brainstorming on maybe a couple of prompts and just see which story actually is panning out, which is more relevant to who you are now. You don't have to decide that right away that this is the only prompt that I'm going to use, because depending on what application portal you are going to use, there are different ways you're going to communicate with the universities and colleges, who you are. If you're applying to say universities in California, they are not going to ask you for one essay. They're probably going to ask you those personal insight questions, and that's going to change how you portray yourself and tell your story, right? And so I think what you need to remember is that all of us are unique. We might have similar experiences, but our perception of these experiences can be very different. What is really important is, being honest and not writing an essay to show off, because I can honestly tell you that, someone like Dave has read so many essays that they will see through when you're trying to just show off, because you can do that, through the activities list that you're going to share, right? But this is really one unique space to tell the universities who you really are, and what shapes you now. What are some of the things that make you happy? I have had students that I've worked with, have used to tell through their essays why that one thing of taking care of their grandparents changed the whole perspective about how they look at life. How they started with being so annoyed that they have to do this, coming to a point where they really love this experience because they grew through that period, right? I will also add that it can be difficult to dig through, what each of these experiences, really mean to you, but that is just the part of the process. You might start with thinking that, oh, 650 words is a lot of words, but trust me, even though you struggle in the beginning to even write a sentence, towards the end of that process, you're going to struggle to cut those words to make it for 650 words on the for the essay. But I think Dave, unfortunately, have only so much time to discuss. But Dave has shared his contact information, with you guys. So if you have any questions, you can also reach out to him about Reed College and the application process for Reed College if you want to explore a little bit more. To answer, I think one of the students had asked a question about recording. This session will be put out on our YouTube channel. So Hitar, you can always go back and refer to this session. I know that you mentioned that you're more analytical and critical in ways how you perceive information, and that's okay. You don't have to really, as they've already mentioned, you don't have to have a poetic essay. It can be a straightforward essay, but you still need to kind of introspect and think and do the deep dive as to why that particular experience or what you're writing in your essay is so unique to you, because that's what you want to share with the universities. Um, I think there is, Hitarat, you want to ask your one last question? Maybe we have another 1 minute, to answer that question. Dev, are you okay to take another couple of minutes? Go ahead, Hitarat, and just type out your question that you have. But in the meantime, I have also shared in the chat box some resources for undergraduate students and parents. Do look at those links. There is some helpful information. You can also go to our website and look at which is the nearest Education USA center. We keep doing these webinars. In fact, next weekend, I think next Friday, I'm doing a session on STEM programs in the US. So if you are someone who's thinking about pursuing STEM majors, join in for that session and get information from what different universities have to offer to you. Let's see. I'm going to give maybe 10 more seconds, Siddharth, if you're typing a question. But otherwise, you can always reach out to us. We'll be happy to talk to you if you have a very specific question. But I really appreciate Dev, you taking time out, giving these examples, because I think as much as I don't like students to follow a template, but I think having sometimes these examples does make sense. It makes them realize that, oh, I can just talk about this experience. It doesn't have to be a dramatic experience, in my life. So we really appreciate that, and we really appreciate the fact that you guys take this time out and bring out this quality content. And I really hope that the students really take something valuable out of these, and that helps them in their application process as well. All right, so I think I'm going to wrap up this session now. You can get in touch with us. I've shared the contact information. But thank you to all the participants. I understand it's Friday evening. I'm sure that you have something else to go to as well. So we really appreciate you taking time out and attending the webinar. And I will see you for the next webinar. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Dave, again for doing this presentation for us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, everyone.